Okay, hello everybody, my name is Wyatt.
I'm Dani.
I'm Anthony.
And today we're going to talk about probably the most relevant issue for us as college students. We're going to talk about student debt and whether or not students are paying too much and how they can avoid paying too much or what should happen, or like what we should do with this.
So basically, just to start off, what we decided that our student debt is impacting our school and people all around the United States, students all around the United States. And we stated that tuitions are extremely high. So we're just gonna go over like what is student debt. So basically, it's also known as student loans, and it's just an aid, a form of money to help you be able to afford college and pay off tuition. So there's two main kind of versions of financial aid and student debt. So there's federal and private lenders. So when you fill out your FAFSA, usually the federal agencies will contact you and say this is how much money you are allowed, and then you can go to private lenders such as banks and stuff like that and take out loans for college. This might be a little personal, but it's okay like if you don't want to raise your hand. But if you could raise your hand, who took out a student loan this year to afford LMU? Okay.
So it's roughly like a third.
Yeah, so that's like about a third. So within California alone, the amount of people who take out student loans is about 52%. So that's over half of students taking out student debt. And that's not even the highest amount of people taking out student debt within the country. In South Dakota, there is about 76% of students did have some form of student debt.
Okay, so then we have to ask, who does this topic impact? So for our three stakeholders, we found that the people it impacts the most are the students that go to the universities, the university themselves, and society as a whole.
So here are some facts about how student debt impacts the students. Obviously, there is that monetary burden that is just like on your back, kind of breathing down your neck. I know a lot of people who are still trying to pay off their student debt even though they are full-grown adults. I know specifically that my dad did not end up finishing paying his student debt when he went to University of Rochester and Columbia University until he was 45. So I looked up some statistics from the American Student Assistance Association, and this is an association that helps families and students work on managing higher education debt, and they give you loan solutions, and the website is actually really good. If you guys are very interested on trying to manage your money, they can help you. They're based out of Boston. So within the survey, they surveyed students and people who have graduated from college about how student debt is affecting them. So 27% stated that it was hard for them to buy necessities that they needed throughout their daily lives, such as like groceries or they need to get gas. 63% stated that it made a large impact on them trying to buy large purchases, such as a house or a car. 47% stated that it was a major factor in starting a small business. 29% stated that it caused them to put off getting married to their significant other, and 43% stated that it delayed them from having a family.
Okay, but when looking at universities, we also see a lot of financial aid that they offer. And this can depend whether or not these schools are public, private, and what types of financial aid they offer, like scholarships and grants. There's actually a big difference between public and private schools as far as how much student aid they'll offer in comparison to how much the schools also cost. Generally, when we look at a public school, they're less expensive as far as tuition than private schools, but they also offer less financial aid, while private schools are usually more expensive than public schools, and because of that also offer more financial aid. But when looking at the two main types of financial aid they offer, we could split up as scholarships and grants. Some people don't know like the difference between what a scholarship and a grant is. So basically a scholarship is more diverse than grants are, and it is usually offered based on merit rather than need, like grants are, and they're usually usually can be donor-based. But at the same time, a university is a business, and and businesses have their own concerns, so they can't stay focused too much on financial aid. They have to think about paying teachers, they have to, staff members, a lot of other faculty, like LMU for example. While UCLA does put a lot of money into research and into education, LMU, as you can see, definitely puts more of its money into the aesthetics and puts a lot more into like how the campus looks and like the feel of the campus.
Okay, so now I'm going to talk about how student debt affects society. So I have 4 main points. So one of the first main points is economic decline. So because there is a monetary burden on people, most of society, there will be less small businesses. Like you guys saw before, the statistic on why people will not choose to start a small business because of student debt, and they're most likely the economy will start to decline because people are less likely to stimulate the economy. So they will be less likely to go out to the mall and purchase luxury items or clothes or anything that they really need, so that could really hurt the economy. This can also cause housing problems. If you do have a large amount of student debt, this causes your credit score to go lower. So if you guys see those like credit score things, it also affects your car and buying a car if you want to get a loan to buy a car. So it causes them to not be able to get the houses that they want. And I know specifically, as for an example, my cousin had student debt to pay off, but her and her fiance were looking to buy an actual house and could not afford to buy a house because their credit scores were so low. So society continued. This basically will cause the United States to have a less educated society, as tuitions will continue to rise due to inflation and other projects within universities. People will not be able to afford college, and that will also cause, also there's problems with getting financial aid. There is a lot of people who do not qualify for stuff under FAFSA or work study. So that will cause people to not be able to go to college and have a less educated society. So that will also lead to less technology and other stuff, such as finding a cure for cancer and finding a cure for AIDS, or discovering the next Apple product. So it'd be kind of difficult for that. And one of the last points that I have is that that student debt is becoming more and more popular and more accepted within our society. I remember my high school choir teacher stating that it's very normal for people now to just have student debt and that it was okay, and she was telling one of my fellow classmates that it was okay to take out student loans. And this is basically now making a shift for promoting student debt and promoting debt within society, which is actually kind of a problem because the United States is within trillions of dollars in debt, and that is very scary to think about, and causing even more debt would be detrimental to our society as a whole.
Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and begin about Loyola Marymount University. We're going to go through a comparison of different universities throughout the LA basin, specifically LMU, USC, and UCLA, because as students of LMU, I think it's important that you understand what's going on behind the scenes with LMU's endowment and expenditures, and understanding how much money is allocated to financial aid and why you all have the financial aid packages that you do. So first, let's start with the endowment. And the endowment is, at LMU and among other universities, is kind of like a savings account for universities. The goal is not to touch the money, to let it build up over time so that they can invest this money in assets and continue to build the endowment, and in the hopes of further improving the university in the future so that they can grow. And that is LMU's priority number 1 as of right now. LMU's endowment is $440 million. And one of the ways that they are building their endowment, like I mentioned earlier, they invest this money into assets, and the goal is that these assets accrue 5% annually. But also, they operate mainly off of revenues, and the hopes is that, like in last year's alone, 2013 financial aid report from LMU, they had over $330 million in revenue, $260 million of which came from student tuition. So LMU is highly dependent on student tuition for revenue throughout the year. And their expenditures, however, were only roughly 300 million, 310 million, which was obviously a 20 to 30 million profit, and that money is then allocated into the endowment. So, and Bertram emphasizes this in his master plan that overall, this was online in an article by LMU, it was just talking about how Bertram's biggest priority, or his long-term goals here at the LMU, is to see LMU grow in the future, and the only way it's going to grow, according to him, is by increasing the endowment. And so, let's go ahead and talk about tuitions and fees. The average tuition here at LMU and fees overall is roughly $58,000 this year, and next year they will go up 3.4% to $60,000. And here's just a simple table, just saying the average debt for some undergrads and tuition, like I said, and the total cost of attendance, etc., and how many people qualify for federal Pell Grants. This is 20%, roughly 1 in 5 students at LMU come from low-income areas and qualify for the federal Pell Grants. So that's why in my next slide, I do not include the federal Pell Grant and federal aid opportunities. Yeah, you can go to the next slide. I do not include federal Pell Grants and federal aid for the average student at LMU because if only 1 out of 5 students here at LMU qualify for it, then obviously most students are not receiving it. So, and this is just a simple table emphasizing how much of the overall tuition it costs. LMU's financial aid only roughly makes up maybe a fourth or a fifth, whereas the remainder of it has to be covered by our students, whether through out-of-pocket or through loans, whether that's federal loans or from privatized lenders. Bertram also talked about the scholarship initiative. The scholarship initiative project is a 3-year project, and this project is all about raising $100 million within the next 3 years from donors, and you can do it in a wide variety of ways. You can donate $1,000, $5,000, or you can donate up to millions. But there are like specific amounts that you can donate. You can't just donate a random amount. And but it is a complex process. Although Bertram talks about it being a 3-year process, it doesn't mention whether or not they're going to match the donor or they match the $100 million throughout the 3-year period with the endowment or not. Because the way the university operates is that when they receive the $100 million donation, they have to match that in their endowment before they are willing to spend it. So they have to build $100 million extra on top of the $440 million that they have now before they're going to spend the $100 million that they receive in donations. So, in scholarships and grants, if you were to take LMU student body, undergraduate student body, which is roughly 6,000 students, and if you were to divide the money allocated to financial aid, which is $76.5 million, the average student aid provided by LMU, whether it be a grant or a scholarship, is roughly $10,000 to $12,000. And ultimately, because of that, because LMU's financial aid clearly does not cover the majority of expenses here at LMU, I believe that it is reflected in the graduation rate when compared to other universities, especially here in the LA Basin like USC and UCLA. The graduation rate here is much lower. Actually, 1 in 4 students here at LMU within a 4-year period will either drop out of LMU or they will transfer. It only has a 75% graduation rate here of enrolled freshmen. And I believe that's largely partly because so many students cannot bear to take on so much loan debt. Next, we're going to talk about UCLA. So UCLA in comparison has 7 times the endowment of LMU. They have $2.8 billion. And the way that they run the university is actually, especially when we're talking about revenues and expenditures, when we're talking about tuition specifically from UCLA students, they make hundreds of millions of dollars in tuition from students because their student body is so huge. But all of this money is actually, every penny that is given to the university in the form of tuition and overall fees is actually allocated right back into financial aid, which is very different from what we have here. And there's a bunch of different reasons why. First of all, tuition and fees, there's differences in how much students at UCLA pay. In-state students pay roughly $32,000 annually. Out-of-state students have an extra $22,600 fee tacked onto their tuition, coming out around $55,000. And the biggest differences between UCLA and LMU are state appropriations. Just in last year alone, the UC system was allocated $2.6 billion from the state of California, and those were distributed across the universities proportionally. So obviously Berkeley and UCLA are going to receive way more than Davis or Merced, etc. And another difference is, and oh, by the way, because LMU is a private university, it does not receive state appropriations. Only public universities like the Cal State system and the UC system receive these. As for donor base, Bertrand was stressing the fact that Bertrand was emphasizing the scholarship initiative process for just $100 million. Well, UCLA alone in last year received $300 million donation from the Geffen family, and this was allocated towards a medical program that they have at UCLA. And also they received $512 million in donations just from alumni and families from there. And they also have a sense of pride and community through their sports team, the Bruins. They're a really popular basketball team and football team. And because of that, I believe that they're able to foster a more sense of community, stronger pride in their school. Whereas LMU, because we don't have that, I feel like the community is a little bit weaker. And that ultimately has an impact on the amount of donors that will donate. So, this is just a good visual representation of UCLA's aid. So you can see that UCLA's financial aid is marginally larger for in-state applicants. So.
Okay, so now I'm just going to quickly talk about USC, University of Southern California. So as you can see, the endowment is a lot larger than LMU's. It's $3.5 billion. The tuition is $62,000, and it's not. And USC is also a private institution like LMU, so there's no in-state, out-of-state differences. So some of the differences that affect revenue is the Trojan alumni base. So similar to what Wyatt was saying about UCLA, there is a large alumni Trojan base within the United States and around the world. You see people wearing USC and they're like 5-on-1. So they tend to donate a lot to their school and their alma mater. Another one is their sports. We also know that USC has a great football team and a basketball team and is known for breeding athletes that are like well off and are going towards the Olympics. So they have a lot of revenue from that as well. And also specific donors, there are people such as Dr. Dre, who's a famous R&B hip hop artist, who has donated billions of dollars to their School of Music in order to promote for a new program for popular music within their music college alone. So USC is also getting a brand new dance college within the university. A dancer who graduated from Juilliard decided she wanted to make USC the Juilliard of the West and decided to make a whole college based on dance. And then also scholarships and grants.
Yeah, so I was able to pull these figures from online as well, from the 2013 USC financial reports, and also in basic facts and figures. So this, when I calculate out the USC aid, what it is I find out how much money they allocate towards financial aid in terms of scholarships and grants, and I divide it evenly among the student body. So, and then actually, interestingly though, I guess this reflects the demographics of USC students. Majority of students at USC did not qualify for financial or for federal aid. So. Actually, for most students, I guess like this piece would not be there. But to keep it consistent with other universities, to LMU and UCLA, we decided to put that in. And these are just some basic facts and figures for USC. So
This is our solution.
yeah. So as for our solution, we want to advocate, especially on behalf of, I guess I'm biased because I'm a student, but after like doing our comprehensive research, we figured out that the best solution would be to make financial aid more accessible here on campus. And one of the ways that we could do that is increase student workers, whether that be federal or non-federal work study, or to increase the number of scholarships and grants provided here at LMU. And in order to do this, we would have to reduce the cost of tuition, or one of the ways that they could do this is reducing the cost of tuition, because like we were talking about earlier, priority number one is the endowment. And so we want to make sure that our revenues are coming out on top instead of our expenditures. So they would be bumping their expenditures by doing so. So they would have to reduce the cost of tuition, and by reducing expenditures to increase profits for the endowment. So in other words, like, are we spending too much money? Are we allocating the right money to the right department? So is the $76.5 million in financial aid, is that the appropriate amount, or should we increase this, which we believe that we should? And also, are they hiring too much faculty on staff, or are they hiring unnecessarily on the university? How much does it cost for maintenance? When you're looking at, I feel like LMU and other universities, they kind of keep it a little vague in their financial reports as to where specifically their money is going. They have general overall categories, but things like maintenance are not emphasized. So you would not be able to figure that out. And ultimately, are we being cost efficient here on our campus?
So for our service, we wrote a letter to President Bertram, just highlighting the facts that we know about the student debt, and although he may know this as well, just kind of point it out to him, just so that way, like,
He knows that like students are aware
yeah,
of the
that
situation.
they're aware.
And we're also going to include like personal accounts from other students besides us, just to demonstrate like yes, like there is like a real concept to this, like it is affecting students within our university, and we need to do something about this. And this is all resources. So.
Okay, great.